entrepreneurs, like they have lots of amazing skills. They're hardworking and they're creative and they take a risk and they can have a vision. But running an actual business and managing people in a way that makes sense always not isn't always their strongest skill set. And that's why I think you see startups, I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, are chaotic more than they should be because the skills that are needed to launch a business aren't necessarily the skills that are needed to run it effectively and smoothly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're almost a visionary, right? Like there's a very creative element to it. There's an oftentimes an intuitive understanding of the market because, you got to find the pain. And the
Right.
pain has to be with a big enough audience to be able to pay a
Right.
price that will allow you to have earn a living. And that I think that requires people to think differently because so often we sort of take the pain for granted, like baked into the cake.
Yeah. Right.
So most people just don't see it. So you really need somebody for a startup who like sees a problem that nobody else is seeing and then finding a solution. And like that's I think hugely creative. But, like a startup is just chaotic because you might be close, but you got to like the experiments have to run out. Like you got to
Right.
get out there, take some risks, see what happens. You think you got it, you think you understand, but you never know until you actually put it to the market and the market judges it. And so even on that front, you're going to just have chaos.
Well, and often in a small company, the the personality of the owner is the culture of the
Yeah.
company.
Oh, it totally.
That
There's
that's how it
actually
works, right?
there's research on that. Like we call it like imprinting. So the founder imprints into the culture, and like I mean, you can have a ton of turnover where eventually that gets undone, but like it's pretty remarkable. Like you have a founder, and their personality tends to go a,
Right.
a very long way. I mean, just look at like Southwest Airlines. Like I just was on a Southwest flight and they were singing a funny little ditty to me.
Yeah.
And, that's Herb, right? That's,
It's her, right?
and he hasn't been around. I don't even know when he passed away, but it's been a while and he retired before that. So they still have a little bit of the, you know, cigar smoking, Harley driving creator in them,
Right, right,
even though they are starting to transform.
right. Well, I think about Amazon, right? Amazon could have been anything, right? It came out of the, and from the start, Bezos wanted a customer centric culture in that company. Whatever we all think of Amazon, and we all use Amazon, you got to admit they're customer centric, and they really try. I work with a I do some content creation and ghostwriting and things like that for an Amazon executive. And boy, his whole thing is we take care of our customers. We take care of our customers. Number one thing in management is we take care of our customers. And it's like if you're not very thoughtful about the culture you're going to create from the start of your company, it could be anything. So I think the best
It
entrepreneurs,
usually winds up being your personality. If
and
you're
it
not,
usually winds up being your first job.
yeah.
Right. That's what got me here. So unless you purposefully say I'm going to do this instead, it's going to be like my brother worked for this startup, and the guy thought management was firing people. Like he hired two people a week and he fired one person a week, and it was a miserable place to work.
Oh, yeah, that would be terrible.
Right, the worst, right? Because he thought intimidation would get the best out of his people, and of course, it got the worst out of his people.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I once saw a survey about the best franchises in California, where I'm from. And it looked, this franchise company wanted to figure out what do the franchisees who are most successful in our system do right? Is it they know advertising, or do they have the best location, or what is it? And so he hired this outside service, and they looked at all, it was like 100 franchisees in this one system, and it turns out that the best franchisees, meaning the ones that made the most money, that had the happiest employees, the least turnover, um, customer satisfaction, and renewal. It was a good owner. In fact, the owner would manage in this participatory, egalitarian way and include people in the management. And it turns out, if you're a good boss, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but if you're a good boss as a franchisee, then you're going to have happy employees. And if you have happy employees,
Employees,
they're
they
going to
take
take
care of the
good
customer.
care of your customers. And
Yeah.
then happy customers become repeat customers.
Yeah.
So there's the secret.
There's a long time ago, when I was getting my PhD, we had somebody come in, and I have not been able to find this research anywhere. So I think he just didn't get it published. But we did like a work in progress lunch, and he was looking at like multi-generation family businesses, and basically the pattern was, so like the old saying, like the first generation makes it, the second generation spends it, the third generation loses it.
Right.
And so basically he was looking at, like, he's kind of testing that in a way. And what he found is that for these family businesses that actually survive, the founder is usually somebody who's very other focused. Like,
that's interesting.
Really, like is doing this for the group, the family, and doing that is, like, just really like in tune with like the community around them. And then inevitably by the third generation, you usually have somebody in that family. It's not for a for certain thing, because certainly we've had organizations that have outlasted 3 generations.
Right.
But oftentimes by the third generation, you have somebody who rises in the family. Like, they're almost like the cuckoo in the bird's nest, right? Like there usually becomes one person who is so self-focused that they kind of drive everybody off, and it's like they're grabbing power, everything. And
Right.
so they rise to power usually by the third generation, and they're very me focused. And that's what undoes. That's
interesting.
Yeah.
So I can give you an example of that. I'm going to a reunion next weekend at a summer camp that I used to work at. The summer camp is 100 years old, owned by the same family, right? The third generation now is running the summer camp. And I work there. My brothers work there. My kids went to camp there, right? It's one of these kind of multi-generational, deep places. And the first generation was this guy who was a legend, right?
Hmm.
He created this ranch and created this camp and created the values that everyone's going to live by. And then the second generation kind of petered out a little bit. But the third generation, the guy who's running it now, is the grandson of the originator. And his vision is to run it just like his grandfather did. And so he's a fantastic caretaker of his legacy, because he's not this egomaniac.
Yeah.
And I've seen these people that you're talking about, right? I've seen those kind of people in third generation companies. This guy's the opposite, and it shows that the opposite can work.
For sure. Yeah.
He's doing it in this participatory, community-oriented, egalitarian way that brings people into his revised vision of what it's supposed to be. And it's really neat.
It is, and that's very smart. And some companies, like some of these family businesses, because that's really what we're talking about in this particular case, some of these family businesses do things to sort of offset that problem. Like, we absolutely love Commander's Palace. And so, like, at one time we were talking to one of the owners, not specifically of Commander's Palace, because it wasn't Lolly or T. We were talking to like one of the family members, and he told us that basically everybody in the family has to go get an education, and they have to go work somewhere else. And then they're allowed to make a decision.
Oh, that's great.
And I think that is a big, big difference. I think that makes a huge difference in terms of, like, instead of somebody who, I don't know, just felt entitled to it.
Right.
And so there are things that some organizations do to get around that. But, this idea of community-focused, egalitarian, building a community, like, it doesn't matter if you're on the internet or you're in downtown and you're working with locals. Like, you have to build a community. Like, that's, if you don't build a community around your business, you're just not going to last very long.